Some people escape cults and think the worst is behind them. Today's guest didn't. What happened next didn't involve ropes, rituals, or leaders, but it did involve power, silence, and a system no one wants to question. This is a conversation about truth, survival, and the moment a person realizes reality is far more dangerous than belief. This is From Dirt We Grow. I am Stephanie Kendall, your host, and I welcome you to today's show. Today's guest goes by Gabe the Great. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You have a, let's say, interesting story to tell. First, why don't you tell me about your manifesto you're writing?
Yeah, so I had always had in my idea of like when I got older, I wanted to write like a theory of everything. Like I've always been into spirituality, philosophy. I went to school, studied psychology. And so that was going to be like, I call it my infinity project, where it was, I would love if there was like something that explained the universe to us. And I thought, you know what, that'll be my life's goal, my life's missions to figure out how does all this thing work. And it just so happened that last year, someone had encouraged me to write a book to put. I was speaking, doing lives, I think on Facebook, and someone said, "Hey, you should write a book. You should put something together." Well, I just started to use Chat GPT to put my ideas on page and to kind of think through my ideas and think through my thoughts. And then after about 17 days, that's when I came up with the Overman's Manifesto.
So it's like philosophical?
Yeah, it's like I would describe it as a new way of looking at reality. I think that we have a lot of scripts about, whether it be religion, whether it be government, all these different ideologies from the past that talk to us about what we're experiencing right now. And I wanted to come up with something from right now that explains what's happening right now. So it's written from the perspective of what's going on here in America, but in it I break down the nature of reality. I think that everybody should have one big thing that they do that they just sort of give to the world, give to the universe, whether it a book, a podcast, maybe your sports, art, whatever it may be. But something, that I just feel like, hey, this is for the rest of society. I hope everybody benefits from it.
Can you tell us a little bit of the main points? I don't want you to give away too much. We want people to read it, but
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I say in the manifesto is that reality is broken up into three parts: yourself, the society, and the unknown. And yourself is made up of three things: universal consciousness, some people may call it or soul or spirit. The terminology is unimportant. It's just that we acknowledge that there's something bigger than us. There's something inside of us that feels bigger than us. So I call it universal consciousness. Then you have your body, right? Your brain, your physical body, all that stuff, and then your environment. These three things make you up. They make what it means to be you. And then the society that you lived in is composed of all the individual selves. um, and then the final part that I think I talk a lot about is the unknown. And it's this idea that as humans, we don't even know what's going to happen 2 minutes from now. We don't know what's going to happen next week. Not knowing is a big part of the human experience. And it seems like these days, everybody knows. Everybody
hmm,
knows what's right. Everybody knows what's wrong. Everybody knows this is the problem with the country. This is the problem with this side and this. And it's like none of us know what's going to happen 30 seconds from now. And so it's this: how do we understand that nature of highly conscious beings like us? And I say is that you got to understand yourself, you understand your society, and then you accept that you don't know anything. Um, and so it's this beautiful dance that I say between faith and humility, where it's we as conscious beings, we can put our faith out into the universe, we can manifest, we can create, but we also don't really know what's going to happen. And that's part of the journey of being human. Part of the journey as um, self-actualizing beings on this planet is that, you know, we gotta we gotta understand that it's not all about us, and at the same time we don't need to fear what we don't understand or what we don't know yet. It's actually a very important part of being human. Even if you look at babies when they're first here, they don't know anything. They don't know up from down, language, anything, but they live. And you see children play, you see their wonder and everything. Like, not knowing is a very integral part of reality and humanity that I think a lot of us we just miss, particularly in American society.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. It sounds interesting. So when you call it your infinity project, does that mean you're working on it constantly? Does that mean you're steady adding to it, or is it complete?
So I think this part is complete for now. But one of the things I talk about in the manifesto is that, you know, you never not know, right? It's the
Yeah,
unknown. And so
yeah.
I'm going to keep developing. I'm going to keep growing as a person. I was even thinking about this the other day. I said, I might look back on this thing 20 years from now and go, man, I was off. Or man, I really had it right. I don't know. I don't know. But that's the fun part of being a human. When I
Mm,
think our society over focuses on self. And so everybody's out for number one. Everybody thinks that their way is the right way. And so when I call it an infinity project, the idea is that you guys can use this, disagree with it, accept it, reject it, do whatever. It is for the universe. It is for, my hope is that this is something that will be used for all of eternity, 200, 500, 10,000 years from now. I hope people to be talking about the Overman's Manifesto and what it means to them and how it's helped them navigate, their time here as human beings.
mm. That sounds pretty deep, my guy. That sounds pretty deep. What made you want to do this? What inspired you?
I always had it, but I have three daughters. My middle child is nonverbal and autistic. And on August 31st, I got that one phone call that every parent doesn't want to have, why people are afraid to have children with disabilities. That happened to us. I got a phone call from her EAs who said that, her special education teacher was abusing her. And I talked to literally over half a dozen eyewitnesses who saw this woman do things to my daughter and other children in the classroom. And they all went to the school district, and the school district covered it up. And so quickly,
Mhm.
I was every thought that you could think of, 100%. But I wanted justice, and I still want justice for my daughter. And so that began the process of, I would say, me getting radicalized politically. Because for most of my life, I was apolitical. Um, from 2008 to 2000, I graduated 2007, but from 2008 to 2016 I was in what I would call a cult. Well, not what I would call. I think everybody would call it a cult. And then 2016 to like 2023, I was pretty much apolitical because at the end of the day, I was like, one, I'm black, and two, more than being black, I'm poor. And so I can't afford to get in the courtroom anyway. And so when that happened to my daughter, and the one thing I'm biologically wired to do is not an option, like a legal option, I start dealing with the courtroom. I start dealing with the courts.
Mm,
And I, wrote my daughter's complaint myself, 106-page complaint, filed it in a federal court that got dismissed because we didn't have a lawyer. And so I appealed it up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They dismissed it again, and then I ended up writing a brief for the United States Supreme Court. And so, in that year and a half between uh, August 2023 and 2000, like April 2025, along with going through a custody issue with my ex, one in which the judge who presided over that custody hearing was literally a lawyer for the school district I was suing. And so I'm going up against our legal system here in America, and I'm like, this whole thing is bullshit. Like, it doesn't matter if you have the lawyer, like, if you have the eyewitnesses, it doesn't matter if you have the evidence, it doesn't matter if you have literal employees from the school district with documented evidence of abuse to children. If you don't have money, if you don't have connections, none of the things that we believe in as people matter. And I go through that process and I'm frustrated because I'm like, I'm right. I am right. This is like, I have the phone calls, I have the emails, like I know what happened to my daughter, and I'm being gaslit by my government that that didn't happen, or they're never going to hear it. And so I think about last year, April in 2025, I'm waiting to hear back from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to start writing that theory of everything that I always said I was going to do. And it just sort of flowed out. It just completely just flowed out.
Well, first of all, let me just say that I'm very sorry to hear about that. What happened with your daughter, and that you had to go through that, and that that baby had to go through that. I'm very sorry to hear that.
See, and that was the other thing. I think my daughters have taught me so much about life. And I think about how she was treated as a non-human object so many
Mm,
times simply because she is autistic. She didn't ask to be autistic. We didn't ask for her to be autistic. I don't believe that this was caused by, vaccines or some government conspiracies. I just think people are different. And I think
mm,
my daughter is different. And one of the things that really why I'm still fighting to this day is one of the things that the eyewitnesses consistently told me was that when this teacher would do this to her, she would fight back and she would stick up for her friends. And so the teacher would do something to some kid in the classroom. And even though my
mm,
daughter can't tell you anything, when she saw something wrong happen, she would speak up, she would vocalize. That agitated the teacher. And so they said,
mm.
your daughter got it the worst out of all kids. And it was because of that spirit. So part of the reason why I'm still going to this day, almost 3 years later, is to honor her spirit. Whether or not she
That
got
teacher's
that from
still
me.
teaching?
Hmm.
No.
Yep. Yep. It is very hard in America to because this I and that's what I found out. I found out this happens all the time, all over the country. All over the country. It is very hard to get these teachers on actual abuse. There are so many qualified immunity rules. In our state, Oregon, there was only 12 special education teachers, and half of them only represented the school district. And then there's a whole racket with the ones who do represent the parents. They are basically paid to make sure we settle or make or try to you
Mm,
know do mediation. And I remember a lawyer telling me, I prefer mediation, and I'm like, I want heads to roll. What do you mean? Like,
right.
there's no mediation here.
Yeah, what
Like,
mediate
I
what?
have. Yeah, I'm like, I have half a dozen eyewitnesses who and by the way, all the eyewitnesses were fired, transferred, or forced to resign. I'm like, we have something huge here, and you're talking about mediation. I'm trying to make sense of all of this, and in a way that's authentic, in a way that's real, in a way
Mm,
that's not, well, that's just the system. No, that's
mm,
not just the system. I
mm-mm.
can beat
It's
the system.
normalized to be broken. That's crazy. That's crazy. Oh, that's just a system. No, the hell it ain't. Like it shouldn't be. Like, are you
Mm,
crazy?
it's not.
The other children in the classroom, what about those parents? Where are they? Like, were they involved?
No. So there were mixed reviews. So when I first found out, I made sure I did my research.
Mm,
First two EAs came to me, and then I said, okay, who else saw this? Who else saw this? I ended up talking to 10 different people, seven of which who were in the classroom saw it happen to not just my kid, but other kids. It's really one, the teacher herself was really good at manipulating the parents. So one of the things I found out is that none of the EAs in the class could see their IEPs. And for those watch who don't know what an IEP is, it's an individualized educational plan. When you have a child with a disability or special needs, every single state mandates that your child, or it's a federal mandate, that you have to have an individualized education plan. And that is basically what you guys use to track your child's progress as opposed to the standard curriculum. Well, the EAs weren't being allowed to see the IEPs. So they had no idea what my daughter was supposed to be learning for 2 years. And also, the teacher would not allow the EAs to tell the truth. So they had these things called communication folders. Um, and the teacher, she ran like a very like hard line. The EAs themselves felt like they were in an abusive work environment for themselves, not just the kids, but she would not let them say anything negative about what happened during the day. And so when I come forward with this, one parent was like, "You're a liar. This teacher would never do that. Stop saying that." And almost kind of sent me a death threat. Was like, "Hey, if you don't stop this, we're going to do something to you." I told my daughter's best friend's mom. She immediately took her kid out of the class. A parent a year later, uh, she I said it, didn't believe me, but then a year later, she got more evidence that that teacher did something, or it was something different because, or a different person, because when I found out in August, and I held a protest October 6th, 2023. That teacher never came back to that school. She teaches, I believe, at another school, but she didn't teach
Mm.
at that school for that school year. So everybody, so they just had like I don't even know who they had in the classroom, but apparently that person wasn't good either. And so when that parent finally found out about everything that went on, they came to me. They were trying to get a lawyer and everything. So it was a lot of mixed reviews with the other parents in the classroom, but that's sort of how, you know, um, these conspiracies work. They get everybody to believe one thing, that nothing bad has ever happened, and then when somebody step forward, you look crazy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's how they want you to look too, you know?
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
you were apolitical for a while, right? And then you got into the politics
Hmm.
because of the politicking going on. And yeah, that's you took the high road.
Yeah,
You
no.
know, you took the high road and you did it the right way and it still didn't work. And that's got to be real frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that's the most frustrating part when you do it the right way, when you take the high road, you have the evidence, you have the facts, you have the data. It's like this is not I'm not my daughter's not getting justice because I'm not capable, right? Because even the non-high road, the person who did this to me is like half my size, twice my age. Like if it just came down to it, like it could be handled.
It would be
But it's
handled. That's
like,
what I was going to say. Yep.
yeah, it's like if I take that road, well, now who's going to be out here to protect my daughter?
Exactly.
And so if I take the high road and I have the facts, I have the evidence, I have the eyewitnesses, I have every single thing except money. And what even drove me more mad was that the GoFundMe is still up to this day. We raised less than $3,000 in about
Mm.
2.5 years. So the frustration was everywhere. The frustration was at the person. I remember even telling the EAs, because they didn't tell me for like 2 years, and they were going through their own things. But I was like, I appreciate you guys telling me, but man, I really wish you guys would have told me this a year ago, a year and a half ago, so that I could have really did something when this first started. So I'm angry at the person who did it. I'm angry at not as angry as
System.
the EAs, but I'm yeah at the school district. I'm
Mm.
angry that I'm trying to go out into the public and get funding or raising and nothing's happening. I'm angry at the system, and it's just like it's one of these things where I know that you can have everything on right, everything be straight, and I also know this from my time being in a cult because, like I said, I spent some time in a cult. When when their reality is being distorted by a certain narrative, you can't tell them anything. You cannot. And that's where I feel like America is at. I feel like America is and has always been a cult in a real sense because we have this idea of freedom, democracy, American exceptionalism that just is not true. And we know that it's just a game for the rich. We know the billionaires get to do
Absolutely.
whatever they want. We know that our courts aren't pure. And it's like the only way out of that, the only way out of a cult is a harsh dose of truth and people being willing to face the truth and the truth hurts because it's an existential crisis because it's like, man, everything you believed in, when I believed that my kid was safe at school and she really wasn't, when I believed that the other parent would take up for the kid in a situation and they don't, and I believed that I could go to the public and get funding and it don't, you're just constantly being hit in the face with the harsh reality, and you're doing everything that you can to not just throw up your hands and go, well, F it, just F the
Mm,
whole thing. And I'm proud of myself for continue to go on because I feel like I'm still fighting for sure,
mm,
but I'm at a place of resolve of where this fight is no longer just pure anger anymore. There's still some real hatred, but the hatred is, in my view, justified. The hatred is rooted in something real. It's not
mm,
what you see in politics today where one side just gets the other side to hate the other. It's like, no, no, no. There's real reasons why we should
mm,
hate America. There's
mm.
very real reasons, and I think my
Absolutely.
life shows it.
You were in a
Part,
real
yeah,
cult? You were talking about a real cult? I wanna go back to that. Let's back up.
yeah,
I thought
yeah.
you
I
meant
was in
like
a
the political cult or something. I didn't.
No, no, no. So it's really interesting. My mother, when I was like, I want to say 6 or 7, she joined a cult. And so I was a part of this cult with her for like 7 to like 12. The International Churches of Christ, that's one of their names, or the International Christian Churches, or the Restored Church Worldwide. Now, me and my mom didn't have the greatest relationship. I'm from Georgia, so I moved to Oregon to go to the University of Oregon. And
Mm.
when I'm at the University of Oregon, I get met by some people on campus and they invite me to this Bible study. Turns out they're from the same church that cult that I grew up in. And so
Oh
I'm
my
thinking
goodness.
it's yeah,
From
I'm
Georgia?
thinking it's God. Yeah, from Georgia.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, oh, this is God. This is totally God. Like, there's no way that that wouldn't happen. And so I dive in head first, and I'm there for 8 years. Uh, that's where I met my ex-wife. That's where I had my first 2 kids. Um, and it was really the birth of my second kid that really got me out of it because at the time I was literally leading a church. And so I found out while I was leading the church was when I finally got behind the curtain. It was like, we're not doing with the money that we're saying that we're doing with the money. It's like we're telling our people that this money is going towards missions, and this money is not going towards missions. And so I was put in a really tough position of like, but I work for the church and I dropped
Right.
out of school for this, and I married who I married for this movement and all this stuff. We left that code March 27th, 2016, right when Trump is in his first
Yeah.
term. And so it was like, even when I first left the cult, I didn't leave because I thought it was a cult. I left because I didn't like that we were defrauding our members. Because at the time, I was still believing in what we said we were. And it wasn't until like 6 months after I left the cult that I was finally able to accept that I was in a cult and I was raised in a cult. And that I was a prominent leader in that cult. So those were, is it like I told you earlier, like the only way out of a cult with like is really harsh dose of truth, to really sit down and go like, I not only was a victim of the cult, but I was also a co-conspirator of the cult. Like I didn't do anything illegal, but I brought a bunch of people in. I
Mm.
studied the Bible with people, I baptized people, I recruited people in. And that's, I believe, going to be the challenging part with America is that in order to revolutionize this country, people got to start looking in the mirror and go, I kind of contribute to this narcissistic, chaotic culture by being all about myself, by not investing in my community, by not building relationships with people that I disagree with, by not finding common ground and
Mm.
things like that. Like we live in a culture that really divides us all into
Mhm.
individuals.
Mhm.
And that was a really hard pill to swallow. But yeah, I spent 13 years in a cult, and I
Wow.
4 or 5 of those I was in the paid ministry.
Did they just let you leave? Like, it wasn't a big thing?
Oh no, 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 no. I
Oh.
had to finesse my way out.
And with that, I'm gonna ask you to come back for part 2. to hear the rest of Gabe's story. So be sure to subscribe to not miss part two. Don't miss what happens next. I'll see you here next week on From Dirt We Grow.